All right, so I just ended somewhat abruptly my the first part of the lecture on addressing the nature of this expansion, right? And um, and so um, you know, this next part of our discussion is going to lead to the complexity of the legacy of all this. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Homestead Act. There were several things going on at this time that you know were this became a positive thing for many American settlers, white and black men and women, not Native Americans, not American Indians. Um, so basically, as you saw in your textbook on page 440, there was the Morrill Land Grant College Act of 1862, and that was a system of funds for the sale of public land to establishing agricultural, mechanical, and technological education. Okay, so I mean, we take for granted now that we get education, have access to education for all the things that we would need in the United States of America. Keep in mind that even in my profession of teaching history, early on in the United States, if you wanted to advance your education in history, you would have to go to Germany often, and that was considered where you would need to go, and obviously with some fluency in German to do that. And so, I mean, there's so many things that we now take for granted that are assumed to be available to us that weren't then. And of course, transportation as well. Railroads giving access, a quick and very easy access for not just people but goods and other resources to be quickly brought into various parts of the United States. Now, talking about the Homestead Act, I mentioned in the textbook that it provided 160 acres of free land to any settler willing to live on it and improve it for 5 years. And if you had more money, it mentions that you could buy the land for $1.25 per acre after living on it for only 6 months. And basically there was 600 million acres to be settled and farmed. What it mentioned is that for some this was very successful, others they didn't make it. I mean, I want you to think about, though, what a different America this was and how this will never be repeated. And that, I mean, we really need to kind of realize this. I mean, as it stands right now, what's some of the biggest issues that we have in American politics? What's making Donald Trump so popular with the Republican Party? Let me rephrase that, with Republicans, not necessarily the Republican Party, but with the base of the Republicans. And what's making the surprise rise of Bernie Sanders coming from the Democratic Party? Well, it's this issue of this lack of upward mobility in America. I mean, Trump is saying, he's going to make America great again, and his line is to say, look, I'm a wealthy man. I became rich. I can help bring us back to the America where your hard work would not have any government kind of things to get in your way, nor provisions, but your hard work should be able to help you rise up to levels, let's say, as possible as him. Then you have the Bernie Sanders side of the Democratic Party, who believes that the government does need to intervene to put a halt to some of the excess abuses of the financial sector and of wealth in America, and create the possibilities of a hardworking person from the middle class to rise up, but with some help from the government, and so forth. Now, my point is that both sides are really wanting to have a vision of an America where Americans can move upward. And it's difficult, we talk about the popularity of the United States and the draw, and for many foreigners, especially European foreigners at the time, was that in this land there was land, and as the natives were being systematically forced off of it, I mean, imagine this right now. Can you fathom that right now, any of us know that let's just say that Canada, there's no more Canadians up there, or let's say that Canada has very little people in pockets, just like the Native Americans, right? And there's a lot of Native Americans up in Canada, and this is the same kind of legacy that Canada has in relations to European settlers and natives. But anyways, so let's say we were told, if you can survive in that cold, harsh areas of Canada, and you can survive there on your own without government assistance for up to 5 years, that land's yours. Do you think a lot of you would go? Of course. What if you were told, well, you're going to have to fight off that land, you're going to have to defend it yourself, you're going to have to everything you have to do yourself? What kind of Americans would go there? Ones that weren't uncomfortable with guns, weren't uncomfortable with fights, weren't uncomfortable with survivalist skills, basically, right? And so a certain type of American was also going to be going out there that was tenacious, that was determined, and was not going to let real obstacles set them back. And this was a way for America to spread itself and put facts on the ground. So it'd be one thing just to fight off the natives, but as more and more people pile in, the demographic shift is greatly disproportionate to the original population that was there, right? And so this Homestead Act, on one hand, is helping create the possibility for people to get liberated, to get wealth for themselves and their hard work. On the other hand, it is at the expense of somebody else, the natives. And we're going to see that for some people, this is going to be accessible. Maybe if you have wealth, that you're obviously able to put more resources into this land. And for others, it's going to be deadly, right? Okay, and this coincided with the expansion of the Transcontinental Railroad, as discussed in this chapter as well. Okay, and many Chinese were brought in to build the railroad, and as you saw in this chapter, they were paid very low and they worked very hard, and many of them died. And so the railroad, in the sense, also has blood on it. And I mean, here's an interesting thing, whether you look at pyramids or all the great wonders of the world, and you see how societies have advanced. What's often not told is the people that are used to make that advancement, and they're literally buried in the background, sometimes very literally. I mean, you look at the same thing in the Arab Emirates right now, where Abu Dhabi and these other countries are booming. They're having these elaborate and beautiful buildings being built. And you can watch many documentaries on this dark side where it's really a slave-like conditions for men coming from places like Bengal, Bengali men from India that are in these deplorable conditions to make these beautiful, beautiful buildings, and they're kind of shoved off onto the side, and the government there definitely tries to protect itself from the image of seeing that human cost. And so, in a sense, we're kind of addressing that for ourselves right now, right? Is that, on one hand, something very beautiful and very powerful about the United States is being created that's very real in a positive way for one group of people, and something very, very permanently destructive for another group is happening, and for some other immigrants. and again, it's also a place where racism, the concept of race, the idea of race, is a very central component. Okay, The Civil Wars ended, but as I always state, the Civil War was never a war about race or racism. It had to deal with issues of slavery, okay? But the issue of racism, it was white views about Asians and blacks and other people of color were mainstream, even from the most liberal, quote unquote, progressive side. And you kind of see that throughout, okay? Now, I'm actually just going to go into to the next lecture. I'll get back to some of these peoples here, do a little bit more of a discussion of some of these different tribes and this consequence to the natives here about regarding things like the Homestead Act. Oops.